Good evening and welcome to the March 27th, 2018 regular City Council meeting. Before we begin the meeting, let me review the procedures for the meeting. The audience is reminded that this is a business meeting of the City Council, therefore clapping, cheering, and outbursts are not permitted. Speakers must complete a request to speak form located at the entrance to the council chamber. Submit your completed form to either the city clerk or the sergeant at arms. When your name has been called, use the microphone at the lectern on the audience's right and state your name and address. If you do not wish to publicly state your street address, you may state only your city or unincorporated Brevard County. Speak to City Council as a body. Do not address the mayor and City Council members individually. Be mindful of the timer at the front of the room and wrap up your comments before your speaking time ends. The following time limits will generally apply. Speaking times may be varied by the mayor with the approval of City Council. Public comments, most agenda items, and the consent agenda up to 3 minutes. Items designated as a public hearing and petitions and remonstrances and communications up to 5 minutes. An applicant, representative, or person who has legal standing to support or oppose a quasi-judicial matter will be permitted enough time as reasonably determined by the City Council to create a record before the City Council. These matters generally include site plan, plat, zoning of property, conditional use, variance, building-related permit or appeal, abandon and vacate requests, annexation, and other applications of law to specific properties. So thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll be in the invocation with Pastor Terry Dye from the First Baptist Church of South Brevard. And if you wish to participate in the invocation, please stand.
All right, let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we are grateful for this evening. Lord, I pray and thank you for this city of ours. What a great city we live in. Father, thank you for these city councilmen, the mayor, our first responders. Lord, I pray that you'd protect them. Thank you, Lord Jesus, that only the truth sets free. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Dye. Next is, you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item A3, roll call, Ms. Weiser.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas.
Here.
Councilmember Alfrey.
Here.
Councilmember Lopez is out of town and will not be here this evening. Councilmember Tim Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Vice Mayor Minus.
Here.
Mayor Meehan.
And I'm here. Item A4, proclamations and presentations, and I have one this evening. Okay, so I have a proclamation declaring April 2018 as Water Conservation Month, and here to accept it is Abby Johnson from the St. Johns River Water Management District Intergovernmental Coordinator. Welcome to our city. Thank you. I see you every month at the Space Coast League of Cities. Proclamation, City of Melbourne, Florida, whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature. And whereas the state of Florida, water management districts, and the city of Melbourne are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation. And whereas the city of Melbourne and the state of Florida have designated April, typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, as Florida's Water Conservation Month to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources. And whereas the city of Melbourne has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events. And whereas the city of Melbourne has invested in a forward-thinking, reclaimed water treatment and distribution system that extends our water supply by safely recycling an average of 2.4 million gallons of water every day. And whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference by saving water and promoting a healthy economy and community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kathleen H. Meehan, Mayor, City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, do hereby proclaim April 2018 as Water Conservation Month in the City of Melbourne, Florida, and is calling upon each citizen and business to help protect our precious resource by practicing water safety measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. Witness my hand in the seal of the city this 27th day of March 2018. Kathleen H. Meehan, Mayor. Congratulations.
I just want to thank you for being a fantastic partner. The district is always looking for model communities, and we're very happy to have the city of Melbourne take on such a huge feat and take a big step with reclaimed water. Follow us on Facebook and social media. We'll have your proclamation posted. You'll be part of the statewide count, and we are super excited. So thank you very much, and we really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Next is item A5, approval of the minutes of March 13, 2018, regular meeting. Council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Moore.
I move for approval of the minutes of the March 13th, 2018 regular meeting.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of the March 13, 2018 regular council meeting by Ms. Moore, second by Ms. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item A6 is the city manager's report. Mr. McNeish, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of details I want to add to what's already on the report. There's a mention of the Hickory Street project that has been given an authorization to proceed starting tomorrow. We don't actually know, and we've told you in your report that the construction will begin tomorrow. There may not be actual hard construction work yet tomorrow. There are a couple of issues that the contractor is working with. Most important thing will be for people to understand that they can go to our website to get information up to the minute every day on what's happening, whether there will be any detours, which are some time off now, but exactly what will happen with the construction. People can look at our website. I've already been to the hospital once to speak to a group about how the project's going to be managed and where they can get information. I have another appointment set up to speak to a group of their volunteers who come in. So we're doing the best we can to keep information out there and make sure people know who to call if they have a question. Particularly the group I spoke to was the emergency service people from the various cities who feed into the hospital, and so they're very concerned, and we're doing everything we can to keep the lines of communication open, and so they know where to go to find out the status on any given day. Second thing, as you know, the fourth floor construction, the finish out of half of the fourth floor has begun. Some of your parking spaces have been temporarily relocated to the first floor of the garage, and that we'll just leave that in place so you know where your parking space is until that project is finished, to bring us the training and conference facilities and some of the office space that we really need. So that's underway. You may notice one of the windows is missing on the east end of the building. That's how we're going to get materials in there with a crane, and so they're well on their way. They've already started the plumbing connections, and that project's underway. The third thing I want to talk to you about had something that came up since we printed the agenda, and it has to do with a position that I've been offered with the Florida City County Management Association. My name has been put in nomination to take a seat on their board of directors. And I wouldn't do that without speaking to you first. Typically, I think it is a fairly routine thing, but in this particular case, you may recall that Mrs. Lewis currently sits as the secretary-treasurer of that organization, and in 2 years, she will be the president. And if I sit for election and take a seat on that board, and there's a nominating slate that's proposed to the members, and then they vote it up or down, we would end up being, for 2 years, it's only a 2-year term that I've been, an at-large term, we would be on that board for 2 years at the same time. And the only reason that really matters is there would be the odd occasion where maybe for a board meeting, we would both be perhaps in Orlando at the same time, not in Brevard County. Given the senior department heads that we have, I don't see that as a problem. We'd still both be working, but I didn't want to just say, sure, I'll sit for that election. without talking to you about it, making sure that you didn't have any issues. Frankly, it's a credit to Melbourne because it's kind of unusual for them to have two people from the same jurisdiction on that board. I think it's a credit to Melbourne that they would ask both of us to sit. So I just wanted to make sure I have your permission before I go ahead and leave my name in that hat.
All right. I don't see a problem. Ms. Moore?
I would just say, wonderful, congratulations.
Yes.
Go for it.
Ditto. Congratulations.
It'd probably be the only thing I ever run for in my life.
Besides the 5Ks.
Yes.
Right,
Yes, yes, yes.
Put 5K coming up too.
Now, our
I
website.
run from, but things I don't run for.
Our website is melbourneflorida.org, but we also, I guess on the information, we're also going to use Facebook and Twitter, right, Mr. McNeil?
Yes, ma'am. For Hickory
right.
Street, we'll be pushing things on
Okay.
Facebook and Twitter. melbourneflorida.org/amazingly Hickory Street.
Okay.
Hickory-Street. So if you just go to our website, it'll be prominent on the homepage to get that update of what's going on Hickory Street.
Very good. Any other comments or concerns with Mr. McNeese? Seeing none. This is A7, public comments. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I have a few. Okay. First is James Cox, followed by Linda Palmisano. Okay.
Thank you, Council. I want to take this opportunity to bring something that I've kind of worked on a little bit. I came across a marker.
Mr. Cox, are you from Melbourne?
I'm sorry, yes, I'm
Okay,
James
very
Cox, Melbourne, Florida.
Okay.
Melbourne O'Galley.
Thank you.
1650 Eisenhower Avenue. Thank you. 74 years ago today, we were out without our cable because a plane knocked out the cable, and that was the telegraph cable. Kind of a big deal back then, but what we don't know is that this Army B-24 that crashed in O'Galley, the pilots basically were able to not run into the homes in Sunset Terrace, but they also missed a train that was on the tracks. So it was for the ability of the pilots, not just by chance, that they were able to possibly sacrifice themselves not to make one of probably the biggest disasters in O'Galley. And that was something we really don't really hear about or know about. And I thought this was a good opportunity, as this being the anniversary of that, to bring that to our attention. What I have in the presented in the record is the Melbourne Times article, which was the next day, which actually lists the men that were killed that day. And there's actually two books. Weona Cleveland's book, Mosquito Soup, and another one by Aircraft Accidents in Florida by Robert Winder. Both of them have accounts of the crash. The facts and the recollection of the survivor was not totally accurate. Extenuating circumstances kind of molded his recollection of what happened. So this is how I discovered through the military declassified records of what actually happened. Hopefully the story can maybe come out a little bit more. The Florida Historical Society has asked maybe I could put a copy of the story in their records. So I think that was something that I thought was a good idea to bring up.
All right. Very good, Mr. Cox.
Mayor?
Ms. Moore.
Would you share with the audience where that plane landed? I'm sure there's a lot of people that are not aware of it.
It's right next to the fire station on O'Galley Boulevard.
It's where the sign is. There's,
Eric, all right.
Knock it off.
It's close to there, but what you have to realize was how they were able to pancake the plane down on the railroad tracks without hitting either the homes or the train. It was pretty much a feat that they didn't really get recognition for, and a lot of actually, for the record, it was 15,530 recruits in Army Air Force that never made it overseas, that actually were killed in combat training and Air Force training. And that's kind of what the story here in O'Galley leads us to understand. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Good, interesting story.
Madam Mayor?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Thomas.
Yeah, this is,
Did you
this
want to
is,
say something to Mr. Cox?
yes, ma'am,
No,
I can
Mr.
speak to him from where he's at. That's a very interesting story. This is the first I've heard of that, and I would like to find out more about it. Just a little bit of information about me. I'm a former detachment commander for search and recovery teams back when I was on active duty. And so I used to go out to Southeast Asia and basically all over the world looking for the remains of our pilots that were killed during either the Vietnam War or World War II, or whatever the case may be. And so that type of story is so interesting to me. And that's the first I've heard of it. So I'd really like to learn more about it. So maybe I can get with you afterwards and learn more about it.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yep, ma'am.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
Councilman
Alfrey.
Thomas, actually, you're one of the few that's been in North Korea, correct?
In North Korea, yes, correct. Yep.
Pretty impressive.
Thank you, sir.
Right, that's why I wanted to tell.
Thank you. Next is Linda Palmisano. And you can just state your city, not your address.
Hi, my name is Linda Palmisano, and I'm a resident of Satellite Beach. I'm actually a native of Satellite Beach as well. And I'm here today to talk about water quality also in a little bit different way. I want to talk about my concerns about water fluoridation. And the fluoridation started in the city of Melbourne in 1966 with City Ordinance 66-12. And I believe the people that were involved in that time did it in the best interest of everyone and, the citizens with the information they had at the time. But now we're about 52 years later, and there's a whole body of evidence that's showing there's significant adverse effects to the health of human beings, animals, dogs, cats, due to fluoridation. And you often hear about fluoride is naturally occurring. That's typically calcium fluoride. And even in areas of the world in China and India where it's too high, you have a lot of adverse conditions, including dental and skeletal fluorosis. Sodium fluoride is typically what you'll find dentists using in a pharmaceutical grade for, topical application. But what we use here and what 90% of the fluoridated communities use is called hydrofluorosilicic acid. And it's actually a toxic and corrosive waste product from the phosphate and aluminum industries. So, hang on just one second. So the CDC has now come out and said that fluoride is really only advantageous when it's applied topically. There's no advantage to ingesting fluoride. And the American Dental Association actually suggests that infants and babies don't get fluoridated water because it causes dental fluorosis. And so actually what we've put in the water to try in a best attempt to increase the health of the teeth is actually doing a lot of damage. If you turn to page 2 of what I've handed out, there's a whole list of reasons not to fluoridate water, and they're all listed there. My own experiences when I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and I didn't want to take a prescription drug, so I did research, and as soon as I went off of all fluoride, filtered the water, we have a water filter on the shower and things like that, then my thyroid function came back into line. So my goal today is just, I come in a spirit of cooperation to provide some information and find out what would the next step be to have it be an agenda item where it's addressed and maybe, discussed about ending fluoridation.
We've had this issue discussed in front of City Council before, and so it didn't go anywhere. So it has to take a majority vote.
Okay, how does it become an agenda item again? What would that process be? I think the last time I know in 2016 was the last, in September of 2016, when it was up for a purchase of the product of the hydrofluorosilicic acid. It was discussed then, but how would we look again? And what could I do to help? I've got my email address there if anyone has any questions. I've also purchased, this is the copy of the book in the library. I purchased extra copies to donate to the city, just to create that awareness and education.
Mr. McNeese, we had Ralph Reigelsberger had done some, had some information that probably he could send it out to
He did already. I've been in touch with him. He's been super helpful. He's been very prompt and courteous and answering questions. And he did send, the typical things in support, but there's a whole body of evidence now. And Since 2010, 236 communities have stopped fluoridating because of health problems
Okay.
in the U.S.
Mayor, what I would say is this. When you had this conversation before, as you mentioned, Mr. Reigelsberger provided a pretty extensive list of citations of the agencies that we listen to when we make the recommendation that we do on how to treat the water. I think if there's new information, I mean, you're making reference to some CDC information and some I can't
American
remember.
Dental Association,
I think was the
CDC.
other. If there's new information since that time, we'll be happy to take a look at it, and we certainly want to do the right things based on the most current science. And so we'll be happy to look and see if there is anything that would change our recommendations to you based on the science of the moment.
Would I need to then follow up with Mr. Reigelsberger? What would I do next to continue
I would say you
this?
could follow up with me directly, and if you just will provide me the citations that you're referring to, we can look at them and see if they change the information that we're
A lot of it
going
is
on.
in what I've handed out.
Okay.
So if you could review that, like I said, I've got books I can also donate to the city, the same book that's in the library, and so I'll be in touch then. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you for coming. Mike Nolan, you can just state your city. We all know you're in Melbourne. I need you right over here, Mr. Nolan.
Mike Nolan, Melbourne, Florida. The last time we spoke was about the reduction of fire service at Station 77 and 78. To date, I have not seen that fire service return to those two stations. I understand the chief did put out a, whatever you want to call it, a report.
Yes.
It wasn't on the website that I could see, so I was not able to read that and look through it. But again, the rescue units are not back. I just want to know when they're coming back.
Okay.
We're still down in the north and the south on our fire service.
All right. So we'll be glad, Mr. McNeese will be glad to send you the report that the chief has come up with.
Okay, do you have a timeline of when you're going to restore that service?
No, I don't.
Why?
Report shows, I mean, I think what you need to do is, like, if you could read the report, it's all within, changing the management in the firehouse. So, and the times look great. So we'll reevaluate it, but right now I'm taking the recommendation of the chief.
Right, and moving an engine, that ladder from 71 to 76, he also made a report on, which was a bunch of, well, we won't go into that.
Okay.
The bottom line is we're without our rescue service in the north and south end of the city. So I'll read the report.
Okay.
And I'll be back
All right.
with whatever it takes to get you people to listen and put that fire service back. We're waiting. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Nolan.
Mayor, if I may,
Mr. McNeese.
for clarity, no medical response service has been removed. We've changed which vehicle we're providing it from, yes, in 2 of the stations, but no service has been diminished. And as you know from the report, we're tracking the response times very closely. And Mr. Nolan's correct. The vehicle type that's being used is one of the variables that's very important. But as you know from reading the information that Chief provided, there are a number of other very important variables, like how quickly we can get supervision on the ground when we need it, and a whole other host of things that you've been provided, and we'll be happy to send Mr. Nolan a copy of. I know this is a really important issue to him. We've spoken about it many times in the past. I'll be happy to provide that information. And Mr. Nolan, if you want to sit down with the chief and I at some point to hash through it, we'll be happy to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McNeese. Mr. Elfrey.
Yes, and I actually looked into it as well, and I noticed that it's basically kind of maybe a 2-step process, and correct me if I'm right, that getting the correct supervision and then more than likely replacing those fire boots on the ground personnel. So kind of looked into it. It's something I think it's going to end up coming back to council to recover those people, but I've reached out to quite a few people, and they all agreed unanimously that we're short on staff and we're short on supervision. So I think it's kind of a growing pain. That's what I kind of saw about it.
Madam Mayor.
All right. Mr. Thomas.
And Mr. Allen, also, I went down to Fire Engine 77, just stopped by, I think last week ago, Sunday, and also I think 78. 78, is that the one off Sarno or Galley? Okay, the one off of Galley, what number is that? 72. And stopped by 72. again, I have some concerns as well. I'm gonna really monitor what's going on with the response times and make sure that we're getting the services that we're supposed to get as taxpayers, obviously. The thing that really concerns me about the changes is that we're taking, it looks like boots off the ground for more management positions. And that's a thing that, I have a little bit of concern with. But again, I'm going to see how this plays out, and we'll monitor it. And our eyes are on it. So, rest assured.
All right, thank you. Next speaker is Marcia Drabeck.
I'm Marcia Drabeck, and I live in Melbourne. I have two issues. At the February 13th meeting, you all approved the motion to direct the city manager to file the appeal with the Planning and Zoning Board regarding the O'Galley mural. In the middle of that discussion by all of you, Councilman Thomas said that after reviewing the hard minutes, he saw a problem with their process in that they're supposed to serve as gatekeepers for the established mural guidelines, but approximately 9 of the 10 artists didn't paint what was initially approved. He said if there's a standard, it must be followed. Then it was pointed out by Councilmember Moore that some of the renderings submitted by Harb were not what was actually painted, so the artists returned and asked forgiveness. She then said the process needs tighter rules. Councilman Thomas then stated that there must be a pre-approval process involving approval of the artwork and a requirement to remove a mural if the final product doesn't match up. While these comments spotlighted the need for more clear-cut direction that Harb would be required to follow, I don't believe any action has been taken on this, and I'd like to know if we can expect the council to make a motion clearing this up in order to avoid this continuing to happen. Otherwise, what will prevent the same scenario as we're dealing with in the O'Galley mural appeal from happening again?
All right,
That's
so
my
it's
first question.
going to the appeal process. So, Ms. Dittmer, have we scheduled that meeting for planning and zoning?
But my question is not about
We're
the
looking at
Sign
each other.
language.
Who's going to talk first?
Sign language.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
As council knows, I've done a follow-up email with the city council advising that we've hired outside counsel to appeal this decision. We filed the appeal. We've ordered the transcripts. We did receive those transcripts. We're at this point coordinating the schedules of approximately 12 to 15 people to try to figure out which date will work for that appeal. It is certainly moving forward. We are also, that's from the litigation perspective, we are also as staff working with Michael Kahn, who is the attorney that we've hired and is in the audience tonight, to prepare some changes to our city code. Those things don't happen overnight, and we're working together through that.
All right.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute.
I have
is that
another
good?
issue. I mean, I had two issues, so I have another
Okay.
issue when you.
All right, Mr. Thomas?
Yes, and I can tell you, you're exactly right. We need to go back and look at those criteria that the Architectural Review Board uses to look at those murals. And I can tell you, I will be making a motion in the near future, within the next council meeting or two, to make some changes there.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll see what happens. But I am looking into that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor?
All right, Mr. Elfrey?
Yep, I also will say as a businessman, I know you're a businesswoman, government does not work as fast as we do in business. I feel your pain. But just be patient, and I can assure you that our staff is working diligently in the background. There's just a lot of steps we have to go through.
Okay.
Okay.
And I have another issue. At that same meeting, Attorney Dawley said that the council, with the council's permission, she wanted to modify the city code to remove the city council from the mural appeal process so that any appeal would go from planning and zoning straight to the court system. After her statement, Councilmember Lopez stated she was not in favor of placing the court in the process and that our city council should decide what's going to be allowed. Councilman Thomas said he was ticked off that the city would try to delegate that authority to the courts, and this issue should be dealt with by the city council. Councilman Alfrey added that this is a city council decision and he doesn't believe it should be taken out of the city council's hands. Then Councilman Lopez said it's the council's job to make the decisions, but she did concede that as long as this was a one-time issue, she would make the motion that this appeal process would go to the court if the decision by planning and zoning was appealed. So she made that motion. But all of this discussion in the minutes points to the council wanting to keep control of the city's appeal process and not defer to the courts. But when I went to the February 27th minutes, it read that Attorney Dawley explained that the appeal process was changed at that last meeting following discussion about preserving the due process rights of the parties. Nowhere in either meeting's minutes is there a motion or a vote directing the city attorney to change the appeal process. She said she wanted to modify the process to take the council out of the appeal process and would do so with the council's permission. But I kept hearing the council members say they didn't want the courts to decide our city's appeals. And the only way Ms. Lopez made the motion was understanding it was a one-time situation. So none of what I read in the minutes sounds like the council wants to be removed from the appeals process. So here's my question. Without a motion and a vote and permission from the city council, can the city attorney take it upon herself to modify the city code? Because that's what it sounds like happened.
All right, Ms. Dolly?
Madam Mayor, I have explained this issue to City Council in the past. Part of the issue is if it comes through City Council, it's important as a quasi-judicial matter that this council hear it with an eye towards due process, and that means you come without an opinion on the matter, and you don't have discussions outside of the hearing on this particular issue. If the opponent were to object that this city council heard the matter and didn't provide due process, then when the matter was appealed from city council to the court, which is their right by law, regardless of whether it's in the city code or not, the court would likely not uphold whatever city council determined and require, as I indicated they have in the FIT versus City of Melbourne case, that the board or the council members recuse themselves from the consideration. So it was with an eye towards recognizing that the due process clause of the U.S. Constitution does take precedent to anything that this council does or anything that I might do. We must all comply with the due process clause. So, and that was the advice that was given. And if you have any questions, council, I'm happy to address it on a particular basis, either individually or as a group.
Right.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am. And I was under the impression, Ms. Talia, that it was a one-time deal for the situation that we were dealing with the art project in question.
That's right.
It was a one-time deal.
I haven't done anything to change city code.
Right, I understand. And so I think that clears that. It was for that the one-time issue that we dealt with. And part of the problem was, if you remember, the store owner was fearful and didn't want to appeal the motion herself.
Right.
So that's why the city manager, we had to get the city manager obviously involved, which is part of our ordinance, part of our statute. And then the drawback of that was if it goes against the Architectural Review Board, and then they can challenge it in court.
Right.
You know, if it comes back here, then we can be in trouble, I guess, because we've talked about it in the process.
Right.
In the quasi-judicial
Then I
process.
guess my question is, when I looked at this February 27th meetings, it says that the process was changed at the last meeting. So that's where I'm coming from. You know, February 27th says that the process was changed. So, you know, maybe it's a mistake in the minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, mine is just a one-time deal.
Because that was my understanding, that it was a one-time thing. But this says that the process was changed. So I don't understand how the process could be changed without somebody making a motion. Is my, you know.
Process wasn't changed, right?
It could, I am not familiar with the particular sentence, but taking it all out of the context that you're presenting here tonight, I would think that the comment was made in light of the procedure that was before the council on that particular issue, not globally.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
Is that clear? Is
Okay.
that clear?
All right, if that's
All
what
right.
okay.
All right, thank you very much. Next is Eric V. Ellebrock.
You're going to let me speak for as long as she did, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I
But
appreciate that.
Not 10 minutes.
There, she spoke for 7.2.
Okay, all right.
I timed it.
Okay,
Working
thank you.
watch. Eric V. Ellebrock, 1948 Tyler Avenue, lifelong resident of the city of Melbourne. I've been drinking Melbourne city water my entire life, and it's been nothing but good to me. Whatever you guys put in the water is great because I have a testosterone level of over 700. So I'm okay with that. That is, I like your water. Okay. Now, I don't know how you can grow up here or live in this city and not know about that B-24 crash. Oh, that's right. Some people didn't grow up here. They just kind of moseyed in and got on the council. Okay. After my last speaking, I thought for sure that the city would issue the report about the Honor America thing, because it's been long enough. But the more I look into this, we need to take some preemptive measures. We need to kick the people out of the water tower. We need to, out of the water tank. We need to sever all ties with Honor America. We can use that property for something else. Let the chips fall where they may when the report comes out. That's another issue. But we need to get them out of that water. We need to get them off city-owned property. We need to break the lease, let the lease not renew, whatever it is. But they're getting it for $1 a year, and that just needs to go away. Because I have never faced so much. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've been coming to these council meetings for 30-plus years. Okay, and we're talking city funding here. I've never seen anything. I've seen some weird shit, but I've never seen anything. Like, excuse me, I've never seen anything that blatant.
Mayor,
the report will deal with that.
Point of order. Ma'am, he repeatedly gets up here and he does this. It's got to stop, Mayor. It's got to stop.
One thing at a time, sir. I apologize.
All right.
It happens. Excuse me. I could say I could blame it on the city water, but I won't. It will not happen again, sir. I beg your apologies. Now, here's the other issue. Okay? We all saw the Stormy Daniels interview. I was impressed with it. I was seriously impressed with it. And I think that the fact that we've named days after gopher tortoises and all that it's high time for the city of Melbourne to declare a Stormy Daniels Day. Now, here's the reason why. This woman is one of the most bravest.
Public comments.
Yes, isn't it bad? But if you can tolerate all this other stuff, I have a right to speak, and I've been doing it longer before you've been sitting up there.
Yes, you do. All right.
All right. Now here's the deal. The city has, the city has honored. When we had the Veterans Gambling Casino. We've named city days and had honors for people who later went to jail. Okay, so, good old Stormy, she's a small business owner. She has a production company down in Miami, so she gets down there, and I'm in touch with her, public relations guy, and maybe I'm thinking within the next 3 weeks, I can get her to stop by the city and accept that in person. Okay, she told me, the public relations guy told me that if I brought it up in front of the city, and we can get the city to do it, and he's going to be checking out the transcripts and all this, he'll talk to her about showing up to accept it personally, which I think will be a good thing. Maybe, because remember, she employs a lot of people down south. Maybe we can get her to move her production company up here and bring some jobs to the city. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ellebrock. That is the last of the public comments, so I will close it and go to item B8, unfinished business. Ordinance number 2018-10, conditional use with site plan approval request at 4855 Wickham Storage. Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, providing for the repeal of ordinance number 2009-43, amending the official zoning map as it relates to the general zoning ordinance number 2005-120 by granting a conditional use to allow a mini storage use on a 6.05 plus or minus acre partially developed property, zone C2, general commercial, located at the southeast corner of the intersection of Wickham Road and Mariah Drive, providing for site plan approval, providing for conditions of approval, providing that the conditional use granted herein may be revoked by City Council if the conditions of approval are not met, providing that the property shall be designated on the official zoning map by the symbol CC2, providing an effective date and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under community development. Ms. Cindy Dittmer?
Yes, staff doesn't have anything additional to add on second reading.
All right. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer? Seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? No, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Thomas.
recommend approval of ordinance number 2018-10 with site plan approval SP 2017-16 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-10 by Mr. Thomas, second by Mr. Elfrey. And this is going to require a roll call vote.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Alfrey.
Aye.
Councilmember Tim Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Minus.
Aye.
Mayor Meehan.
I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item 9 is ordinance number 2018-11, conditional use of an executive cigar shop. Ms. Allison Dolly.
An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending the official zoning map as it relates to the general zoning ordinance number 2005-120 by granting a conditional use to allow the consumption of alcohol, beer, and wine on the premises, accessory to a bar tavern use in a 4,032 plus or minus square foot unit of an overall 0.23 plus or minus acre developed site, Zone C3, Central Business District, located on the south side of New Haven Avenue, approximately 135 feet east of Vernon Place, 843 East New Haven Avenue, providing for conditions of approval, providing that the conditional use granted herein may be revoked by City Council if the conditions of approval are not met, providing that the property shall be designated on the official zoning map by the symbol CC3, providing an effective date, and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under Community Development. Ms. Cindy Ditmer.
Yes, staff doesn't have anything further to add on second reading.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Ditmer? Seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures?
No.
Seeing none, this is a public hearing. I do have a sign-up sheet. Mr. Eric Ellebrock.
Yes, ma'am. You know, one of the most commonest broken laws in this state, in my opinion, in the city, is the fact that concealed weapon holders cannot go into a place that serves alcohol carrying a gun. That's totally ignored because unless you use it, nobody's going to need it. And boy, let me tell you, that cigar shop is one of the prime things. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a very high-end, high-class joint. I don't go in there personally because it's a nest of Trumpists. But besides that, okay, they've been a backbone of our downtown. They have been there for a long, long time. And if they want to expand, they should be allowed to. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ellebrock. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of ordinance number 2018-11 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-11 by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Ms. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, this is going to require a roll call vote, second reading.
Councilmember Debbie Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Alfrey.
Aye.
Councilmember Tim Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Minus.
Aye.
Mayor Meehan.
I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item C is under new business. We have C10. This is a task order of BMEG 206 to the continuing contract for engineering services to Riverview Park Living Shoreline, project number 213, Besson Mayer Engineering Group, Merritt Island, $52,000. Ms. Jenny Lamb.
The Stormwater Quality Master Plan identified the shoreline at Riverview Park for the construction of a living shoreline with an oyster breakwater. This project is a candidate for funding from the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Trust Fund. Staff actually has applied for that funding, and we should receive final notification after April 10th. But currently, the advisory committee voted for approval of that. And that would be for $127,270 towards the construction of the project. Installation of this living shoreline with oyster breakwater is one of the many tools that can be used to remove pollutants from the Indian River Lagoon. And as projected, we look to remove 307 pounds of total nitrogen and 104 pounds of total phosphorus per year with the project as just in the concept planning of it. It may be more after the final design is done. This task order, we're moving it forward now, because the Save Our Indian River Lagoon Trust Fund will not pay for the design portion, but part of why we're moving it forward now is, as you know, we're doing the Riverview Park Boardwalk, and we want to make sure that those two designs work well with one another. And it also, the environmental permitting can be done at the same time, and there's a little economy of scale to the permitting portion of that. So that's why we're bringing this forward at this time. And so recommend approval of task order number BMEG 206 in the amount of $52,000 to Bus and Mayer Engineering Group.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Any questions for Ms. Lamb? All right, so I have a question on, so the Indian River Lagoon Task Force, or it's a committee?
Yes.
All right, so they can't pay for design?
It is part of what the funding goes for. They pay a total number based off of the amount of removal and the type of project that it is, and that it goes more towards the funding of the construction. If we were to come in and that if the project was going to cost less than $100,000, they would consider paying for the design. But because we expect the construction to cost over $350,000, they would prefer just to pay for the construction portion of it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Lamb? All right, seeing none. Council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of task order number BMEG 206 to Bus and Mayer Engineering Group Incorporated of Merritt Island, Florida, for the Riverview Park Living Shoreline Project number 20013 in the amount of $52,000.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval that's stated in council's package on under item C10 by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Mr. Elfrey. Discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number C11 is the consent agenda. Nothing was pulled. So council, what is your pleasure on item 11, A through C?
Mayor,
Ms. Moore.
I move for approval on the consent agenda, items A, B, and C.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda 11A through C by Ms. Moore, second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item 12, C12, items removed from the consent agenda, we have none. Item C13 is resolution number 3723, authorizing the issuance of non-ad valorem refunding revenue note, Series 218, in principal amount not to exceed $6,750,000 to refund certain outstanding public service utility tax revenue bonds, Series 2003, subordinate electric utility tax note, Series 2005, and subordinate electric utility tax revenue note, Series 2006. Jeff Down, Director of Finance, is here.
Thank you very much, council members. Tonight we're here to do something similar to what a resident would do when interest rates are low enough that they can refinance their mortgage on their home. We're refinancing these three debt issuances and combining them into one in order to save the city save the city money over the remaining length of the bonds themselves. Public Financial Management, Inc., otherwise known as PFM, they are our city's financial advisors. They recognize the opportunity due to the couple of the existing notes that had an opportunity to raise their interest rates to actually get a fixed rate on these notes, on this note, in order for us to save the funds. Bryant Miller Olive, the city's bond counsel, has also played a key role in this opportunity, as Allison Dolly has also done. We actually issued an RFP to lending institutions once we recognized that there was an opportunity for savings, and received 11 proposals, which is fantastic. That shows great interest in the strength of our finances within the city and how attractive we are for investors to loan money to us. So we're not borrowing new money, we're replacing existing loans with a new loan. We do have three separate debt obligations: the Series 2003, the Series 2005, and the Series 2006. The big picture is we're going to borrow $6,490,000 at 2.75% interest, and that includes some borrowing costs of legal and our financial services, financial advisors costs, and some other small items. We will also be paying a portion of the interest, which we had already budgeted in fiscal 18. The bottom line is that the city is going to save $598,000 over the life of the remaining portion of this debt, and that translates anywhere between $66,000 and $71,000 each year for the next 8.5 or so years, 9.5 years. So that's really good. Happy to be able to bring that savings to the city. We are going to pledge the new note with non-ad valorem revenues. It's a little bit different than what we pledged before. It's easier for the city to do that and provides us greater flexibility. The note will be designated as a qualified tax exempt obligation, so that's good as well. And with that, we request that the City Council approve resolution number 3723, authorizing the issuance of the Series 2018 note in the amount of $6,490,000 and all the authorizations necessary to complete the sale of the note. There's a lot of paperwork that goes through it, anti-dilution tests, certifications, the notes themselves. So there's a lot of paperwork that the mayor, the city manager, Ms. Dolly, and myself have to sign in order to perfect this note. So we're asking for your authorization for all of that in the resolution as well.
Thank you, Mr. Town. I want to clarify on the debt service savings. Did you say $598,000 or is it $519,000?
If you were to just look at the savings of what we're going to pay in principal interest each year, the savings is $598,000. The present value, if you discount that to today's dollars, is the $519,000.
All right.
Okay?
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Town?
No, let's just like to
Mr.
say good
Alford.
work on this. This is smart business right here. Very good work.
Yeah, anytime we can save money for the city, that's a good thing. Anything else? Mr. McNeese.
Mayor, I'd give a nod to Mr. Tan and also to our city's financial advisors, PFM, Public Finance Management, who helped get this to the table, and without them, it wouldn't have happened either. So we owe them for bringing this to us as well.
All right, thank you very much. So, council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Ms. Thomas.
Move for approval of resolution number 3723, authorizing the issuance of the non-ad valorem refunding revenue note series 2018 and providing authorization to complete the sale of the note.
A second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of resolution number 3723, as stated in council's package by Ms. Thomas, second by Mr. Elfrey.
Yes, ma'am.
Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number C14 is the grant applications for the reconstruction of the Ballard Park Boat Launch Docks. And let me get to that, item number 14. And to report that is Mr. Kevin Brisky from Parks and Rec.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For your consideration, we seek authorization to apply for 2 grants. The first grant being the Florida Inland Navigation District Waterways Assistance Program grant in the amount of $350,000. And the second for the Florida Boating Improvement Program for the same amount, $350,000, totaling project cost at $700,000. This project is a grant application for boat launch docks and ramp construction at Ballard Park. Our hope is that the two, for the total project cost, will be matching grants for each other. If in fact one grant does not come through, we would seek authorization from the council in the amount of $350,000 for future CIP improvement funding. We anticipate that based on the project of the design and permitting phases going on now, we'd anticipate that to be in fiscal year 19-20. If in fact both grants fall through, we will seek authorization in the next funding year for the same, that we would go after both grants again in the funding year. For your consideration, we seek approval to apply for the fine grant as recommendation A, and B, authorization to approval to apply for the grant, the FBIP grant application.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brisky. Any questions for Mr. Brisky? All right, seeing none, I do open it up to public comments. I do have a sign up, Eric Ellebrock.
Anything we can do to save money for the city. That's a great quote. I'll remember that. I have no objection, of course, to applying for any kind of grant money, free money out there that, we can get from the state or the feds. But I think we're putting it in the wrong place. I think that, and I know those boat ramps. In fact, I was out there just the other day. I mean, I grew up on those boat ramps, for gosh sakes. I remember when there was nothing but marl. We're putting the money in the wrong place. That money, where we're going, we're applying for this, needs to be going to the old Rathman Marinas ramp. Those ramps that we have at Ballard aren't exactly great, but they're certainly serviceable. Okay, what we need are more boat ramps. And we've got a boat ramp down there at the harbor at the old Rathman's Marina. We're not, the only thing that marina is being used for is parking for that frigging UBS building. But here's the point.
Watch your language.
Frigging. Here's the point. Okay, it's going the wrong place. Okay, we need, if, okay, you want to do some property flipping. Okay, but until we flip that property, can't the citizens of the city use it? Come on, the fence has been up there long enough. There's a ramp this summer when there's a line all the way to the entrance of Ballard Park to use the boat ramps. How come we won't be able to use the Rathman ramp? How come? We can use some of that money. We should apply for that money for the grant for the Rathman ramp. Thank you.
All right. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Ms. Thomas.
Move for approval of resolution number 3724.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of resolution number 3724 by Ms. Thomas, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Mayor.
Ms. Thomas.
Move for approval of resolution number 3725.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of resolution number 3725 by Ms. Thomas, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number C15 is the preliminary funding recommendation for fiscal year 2018 to 2019 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Action Plan. And this goes under community development.
Yes, and
but-
Ms. Carter will be making the presentation.
Right. Welcome, Ms. Carter.
Thank you. This request is for City Council's preliminary approval of projects and activities proposed for inclusion in the city's fiscal year 2018-2019 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan. Community Development Block Grant allocations for federal fiscal year 2018 are currently unavailable. In the absence of a firm number and for planning purposes, staff used last year's Community Development Block Grant allocation amount of $461,297. The funding amount will be adjusted upon receipt of the final allocation from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. 2 public hearings must be held for preliminary approval, and final action will return to City Council in May, or when our federal government provides us with firm numbers. At the $461,297 funding level, the statutory limits on public services and administration planning spending in the Community Development Block Grant Program for fiscal year 2018-2019 are as follows: $69,194 for public services and $95,459 for administration and planning. The Citizens Advisory Board deliberated on staff's recommendations during its regular meeting on March 5th and agreed with the recommendations by staff. Projects proposed in the preliminary funding proposals for the action plan are consistent with the city's goals and objectives written in the 5-year consolidated plan. Those projects and activities include public services, public facilities and capital improvements, administration, and other projects. I know that there are some people here this evening that were concerned also about stormwater improvements, and I want to mention that that was expanded after our meeting that we held with the Citizens Advisory Board. While the stormwater improvements for the South Melbourne area, these improvements could be funded from stormwater utility funds, but there's not enough, and we want to get right to the improvements. Our IRMA monies and some of our other grant monies are slowly coming in. So we want to address those as soon as possible. Utilizing these community development block grant funds will allow us to do that. Some examples of the stormwater improvement monies for the Grambling Park subdivision and surrounding area will be for the inlet replacement of drainage pipes and structures, and the scope will also be expanded and determined by our engineering department. So it will be for inlets as well as piping and drainage improvements. So that's being expanded, and I want to address that because that's a little bit more information than we had at our March 5th meeting. Staff recommends preliminary council approval of the proposed projects and activities for inclusion in the proposed 2018-2019 Community Development Block Grant Action Plan.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Any questions for Ms. Carter? All right, seeing none, council, what is your pleasure?
Madam.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. I have, a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? No, okay. All right.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Thomas.
I recommend approval, preliminary approval of the proposed projects and activities for inclusion in the proposed FY 2018-2019 CDBG Action Plan.
Second.
I have a motion for approval of the preliminary approval of the proposed projects and activities for inclusion in the proposed fiscal year 2018 to 2019 CDBG Action Plan by Mr. Thomas, second by Ms. Moore. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item number 20 is presentation, excuse me. No,
16.
excuse me.
16.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Item 16, the Home Action Plan, preliminary funding recommendation for fiscal year 2018-2019 Home Investment Partnership Program called Home Action Plan, and this is under Community Development, which in turn it will be Denise Carter.
Home allocations for federal fiscal year 2018-2019 are currently unavailable. In the absence of a firm number and for planning purposes, staff is using the fiscal year 2018-2019 home allocation amount of $158,128. The amount will be adjusted upon receipt of the final allocation figure from Brevard County. Staff solicited public input on the city's home program during neighborhood public meetings held on November 14th and 16th, 2017. One request was received as follows. It was from Macedonia Community Development Corporation. The corporation was seeking funds to support construction of 2 single-family homes. The homes would be 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. And however, the Macedonia Community Development Corporation also came to us interim this year. They were working on a project with the county, and that will no longer happen. So they're asking for funds from the city for this year. So if the city funds the projects that they're asking for this year, we will not have funding. So that's why there's no funding recommended for that project. The funding committee again met on January the 19th, 2018, and made recommendations on funding. The Citizens Advisory Board deliberated on staff's recommendations during its regular meeting on March 5th and recommended the same funding. In order to meet the Brevard County Home Consortium's consolidated plan procedural deadlines, staff is recommending that the fiscal year 2018-2019 home funds be allocated across the broad categories that would cover the types of affordable housing projects and activities that meet regulatory requirements and fall within the priorities specified for inclusion in the Home Consortium's 2018-2019 Consolidated Plan. Staff recommends preliminary approval of the proposed activities for federal fiscal year 2018-2019 home funds and authorization for their inclusion in the Brevard County Home Consortium Consolidated Action Plan of 2018-2019.
All right, thank you, Ms. Carter. Any questions for Ms. Carter? All right, seeing none, this is a public hearing. Do I have any sign-up sheets? I have no sign-up sheets. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council on item C16. Council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Ms. Thomas.
move for approval for the preliminary approval of the proposed projects and activities for inclusion in the proposed FY 2018-2019 home funds and authorization for their inclusion in the Brevard County Home Consortium Consolidated Action Plan for FY 2018-2019.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of item number C16 as stated in council's package by Ms. Thomas, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Item C17 is the site plan approval request, Heritage Park at Crane Creek. I don't need an attorney interpretation. This is under community development. Ms. Cindy Dittmer.
We're ready to go. This is a request for site plan approval to develop a 96-unit multifamily affordable housing project on 15.04 acres that are currently undeveloped land located on the south side of W.H. Jackson Street, east of Leonard Weaver Boulevard, and west of Grant Street. The applicant is proposing to construct 4 3-story buildings that will contain a total of 96 units. The current future land use on the property is medium-density residential, which would permit up to 15 units per acre. And I apologize, there was a typo on your item summary. It said 16 units per acre. It's actually 15. However, the applicant is proposing at this time to only develop up to 6.37 units per acre. I did want to show City Council the site plan that we have here. The site plan does show 2 different access points, one to the north to W.H. Jackson and one to the east onto Grant Street. I think the applicant's going to be happy to tell us this evening that they have acquired the access across the Grant Street portion, and I'll let them confirm that for us. The site plan contained both of those as an option. And as far as the proposed development, the amenities that'll be proposed with the multifamily, they are proposing a large playground area, a clubhouse that will have a computer lab and a library within the clubhouse, as well as a barbecue area and an outdoor area overlooking the wetland. Additionally, where the project abuts single-family residential to the south, there is a 50-foot wide buffer in this area, along with a proposed 6-foot tall masonry wall along the south property line. And the rendering of the proposed buildings, this is the architectural style that they are proposing to construct on this site. And with that, staff would recommend approval of SB 2018-03 based on the findings and conditions contained within the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Thank you, Ms. Dittmer. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer? All right, seeing none, this is quasi-judicial. Any disclosures?
No.
All right, I have one disclosure. On February 28th, I met with Keith Donald, the Street to Homes project, his wife Carrie Donald and Jaron Eisenberg at the Melbourne Main Street to discuss the Heritage Park project. The project is to develop affordable housing for low and very low income persons on 15 acres on Grant Street across from the Joseph N. Davis Community Center. The partnership between CAR4 Supportive Housing, Inc. is to construct 4 3-story buildings not to exceed 48 feet, a single-story clubhouse, a wetland overlook area, and a playground area. Mr. Donald is working with the Scott Chapel United Methodist Church to provide access to the Grant Street.
Mayor.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Minus.
I, excuse me, I have been emailing back and forth with Mr. Donald as well about the proposed project. and also to have a meeting with the community about the project, the expectations and what is expected of them and what is expected of the community. And it seems like it is a great project. I'm totally in support of it, and when it comes to the community, I hope it is approved by the community. This is very well much what we need, and I hope it is approved.
All right, any other disclosures? All right, seeing none. This is a public hearing, and I have some sign-up sheets. Keith Donald. And you can just state what city.
Keith Donald, Melbourne. Good evening, Melbourne City Council. I'm pleased to be here today as the local nonprofit sponsor and representative for Heritage Park at Crane Creek. I'm here with Paula Roman, Vice President of Development with Carrefour Inc., the developer and applicant entity, and Alfred Rivallo with Bihar Font, who is the architect behind the site plan design. They're in attendance as well. I'd just like to say a few words about what makes this project unique from my perspective, and then turn it over to Paula to tell you a little bit more about Carrefour and answer any additional questions that you may have. Melbourne is experiencing rapid economic growth, but with that growth, we are seeing some unintended consequences. We have high-paying jobs coming in, but housing rents are going up, and the higher rents are making it harder for lower-income families just to get by. This project will directly relieve some of that pressure. Heritage Park, as Cindy mentioned, aims to be much more than just an apartment building. It will be a vibrant community. You can see that in the design of the amenities, from that large playground area to the outdoor events and barbecue area to the large clubhouse with the indoor library, computer lab, community space, and offices. The property itself is also unique. It's a large piece of property in South Melbourne. It's 15 acres total. And the wetland area, that's 3.3 acres of land in the middle. That design aims to preserve as much of that wetland habitat as possible. Conservation is something that's important to me personally, and we aim to go beyond simple conservation in the future by working with local natural resource partners to improve that area by doing things like removing invasive species and adding features for the community to enjoy, such as a walking path and boardwalk. This project will bring millions of dollars of private investment into our community as a Florida housing tax credit development, and we are well positioned, as this year Brevard, as a medium-sized county in Central Florida, is a top funding priority for the state. This investment will create jobs and accelerate neighborhood revitalization in the South Melbourne area. Finally, this project is a local mission-based endeavor. I'm with a local nonprofit. The developer, which you're about to meet, is with a nonprofit. This project will put Melbourne residents first and is expected to be fully locally owned as well. I'm pleased to be here with you today as part of this site plan approval process. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Donald. Next is Paula Roman.
Yes, Paola Roman with Carrefour in Miami. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to consider this. This is going to be, Carrefour was created 25 years ago by the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce to specifically address our housing crisis and provide housing for persons of low income. And since then, Carrefour has provided over 19 communities that have really been a great help in allowing people to work and enjoy life, working class that struggle to make ends meet. What we're proposing is a site plan. We're asking you to approve our site plan to give us an opportunity to submit in a very competitive application cycle to the state, which Carrefour, as the leading not-for-profit developer, has an extremely high track record of scoring the highest. If we do submit the application with your approval, in April, we do have the opportunity to bring in the construction cost to cover everything that we need in order to build the 96 units. And I'm here if you have any additional questions. I also like to add that Carrefour and Bihar Font have been working on different communities in several different occasions, so we do have that expertise of working together on this particular type of affordable housing and funding sources. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Alfred Ravello. I'm sorry if I...
Got it.
Okay, all right.
Alfred Ravello, Behar Font & Partners, Coral Gables, Florida. And I just wanted to say that I'm available for any technical questions the board may have.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Ravello? All right, thank you very much. Jaron Eisenberg?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to express my support for this project as someone who works with the large tech and defense companies, as well as the startups and emerging technologists. I can tell you that there is a great need for this type of development in this community. We all like to tout and celebrate the success of Grumman and Harris and Embraer, but as Keith mentioned, there's unintended consequences. It's becoming harder for low-income families to find a place to live, but people want to live in Melbourne, and they're having to go really far out to find a place to live. So this provides more resources. And Keith and his team have made such an impact on this community. So to have Keith expand his role in Melbourne as a developer is very exciting to me, both as a citizen and as the director of Melbourne Main Street. This project, as it has in previous cities, will serve as a catalyst for growth and revitalization, and will be a tremendous resource for the community that it will be in. So I hope council will give this project its full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eisenberg. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Vice Mayor Minus.
I move for approval of SB 2018-03 based upon the findings and conditions contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of SP 2018-03 by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Ms. Moore. Discussion?
Mayor.
Yeah, Ms. Thomas.
I would just like to say, I mean, this looks like a very wonderful project, and I'm really glad that you picked this area to want to do this in, and I really do hope the community comes in behind them and supports them for this. I think it's going to be really good for the community, so thank you.
I did.
Yeah, all right, I do too. It's a wonderful project, and it's going to really be an asset for South Melbourne.
Definitely, it's definitely going to make a great difference.
Right.
The gentrification and all is very much well and alive. However, to have a nonprofit and that their heart is in it, it just warms me, and I'm very happy to support that.
All right, very good. Any other comments? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Congratulations. I know you'll be coming back. Item C18, ordinance number 2018-12, zoning text amendment on mobile catering kitchens. Miss Allison Dolly.
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance of the City of Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, relating to mobile catering kitchens, making findings, amending Chapter 46 of the City Code entitled Solicitation, amending Section 46-19, Purpose and Intent, amending Chapter 56 of the City Code entitled Traffic and Motor Vehicles, amending Section 56-35, Parking Vehicle for Purpose of Vending, displaying or advertising goods, services, or place of business, amending Appendix B of the City Code entitled Zoning, amending Article 2, Definitions, amending Article 7, Accessory and Temporary Use Structures, providing for severability and interpretation, providing an effective date, and providing an adoption schedule.
Thank you, Ms. Dolly. This is under Community Development. Ms. Cindy Dittmer.
Yes, this is the first reading of an ordinance amending city code to establish a new accessory use category called mobile catering kitchens for all restaurants, bars, and brew pub businesses within the city of Melbourne. If council recalls, back in November, we had a discussion about how to address mobile catering kitchens, mobile food trucks, and council was provided several options. Council directed staff to move forward with option B, which was to allow an annual license for a mobile catering kitchen that would be associated with a restaurant, bar, or brew pub on the same site, that would be a self-contained unit and licensed by the state, that would sell and serve food through the principal business on the property, not through the truck itself. So there wouldn't be any direct sales from the food truck. So that was council's direction back in November. So staff has prepared the ordinance that's before you that establishes a mobile catering kitchen as an accessory kitchen to a restaurant, bar, or brew pub that will not sell to the general public. The ordinance proposes that there be up to one per principal business, but not more than two per property. So if we do have a larger property, maybe a shopping center, and there are two restaurants, there is still the possibility they could each have one on the overall larger property. The mobile catering kitchens would only be permitted to operate during the principal business hours, mainly because the sale and service and the restrooms and everything need to be open at the same time as the business. And the mobile catering kitchen function itself would not require any additional parking for that use. Additionally, as far as the location, they are proposed to be citywide on private property. They would need to be located on a paved surface and to the rear or the side of the principal building when possible. They would need to meet the accessory structure setbacks, which is 5 feet off the property lines. And they would not be allowed to be located within a required parking space except in our central business overlay zones, which is primarily downtown Melbourne and downtown O'Galley. And in that case, they could be located within a required parking space on there. Staff, additionally, we are also amending Chapter 46 and Chapter 56 as sort of a side note. Both of those portions of the code prohibit this type of food truck or mobile food truck. So the language that's being changed in Chapter 46 and 56 is just exempting mobile catering kitchens from that requirement. We did present the changes through all of the 3 CRA boards, and the Planning and Zoning Board did vote unanimously to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance, and staff would recommend approval of ordinance number 2018-12 based on the findings contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Thank you, Ms. Dittmer. Any questions for Ms. Dittmer?
I have a comment.
Yeah, Ms. Moore.
This was sort of my baby, being in O'Galley at the Intercoastal Brewing Company. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you did do on this and basically followed along with what we requested from the city. Because this, at Intercoastal, I can only address that. It's a real asset to their business. And their Intercoastal is just a real asset to downtown O'Galley. So thank you for all the work that you've done on it. If there aren't any other comments, I would like to make a motion.
I have to open up for public comments.
No problem.
All right. Mr. Elfrey.
Yeah, I got a real quick question. How did we get to the $500 permit fee?
We looked at the time, the staff time that was going to incorporate both the time of community development staff, but also the fire inspection time.
Okay.
So it's a combination of all city staff. There won't be any additional inspection fees or anything on top of that.
So basically, we're just being compensated for our time with fire and such, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I can live with that.
All right. Any other comments?
Yes, ma'am. A very unique business model. I'm looking forward to seeing how this works. I think it's a really neat concept, and I'm interested to see how it goes. So congratulations, great job.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I will open it up for public comments. Eric Ellebrock.
You know, I supported that brew pub opening up when other people on the council didn't. And it's great, anything to help them business, you know, and I think that's fantastic. I think this is going to work out well for them. However, I think down the road, this is going to have some unintended consequences. Now, y'all, I'm sure y'all have researched this and did everything, but I can see this being abused, but I'm okay with that. You know, any kind of food that comes out of the back of a truck is all right with me, you know, but I can see other restaurants and such, you know, places that are, you know, basically strictly supposed to sell booze, you know, using this as a, you know, auxiliary business. But hey, y'all make your choices. But again, I want to go on record saying this can be abused. But I don't think, you know, in this particular instance with the Intercoastal, they're not going to. But this is going to come back and bite us. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ellebrock. Close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Ms. Moore.
I would like to move for approval of ordinance number 2018-12, based on the findings contained in the Planning and Zoning Board memorandum.
Second.
All right, I have a motion for approval of ordinance number 2018-12, as stated in council's package by Ms. Moore, second by Mr. Elfrey. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Congratulations. Item C19, resolution number 3720, a resolution authorizing the sale of a 2.5 acres of vacant airport managed property located adjacent to the L7 canal between NASA and Old NASA Boulevard. Mark, I need you on this, on the left, sir. Yeah. This.
That's staff.
That's staff.
Oh, okay.
Staff.
You know what? I apologize, Mark, over here. You needed the exercise, right? All right, this is Mark Busalaki from the Orlando Melbourne International Airport.
Yes, ma'am.
Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. This contract gives the airport the opportunity to sell the property, which, due to its location, is of no current or future there's no future or current or future operational need for the airport. So if the buyer closes, the airport can use the net sales from the parcel, from the proceeds to that are eligible for projects at the airport. The contract incorporates all of the specific requirements of the city attorney. We appreciate all of the help we got from the city attorney, by the way, and all of the requirements by the FAA. It has been approved by the airport board, and on behalf of the airport authority, we respectfully request your approval.
All right, thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? All right, seeing none, I have a sign-up sheet. I have a public hearing. Eric Ellebrock.
You can sit down, man. I don't have any questions for you.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes, ma'am.
Right off the bat, it's another. I don't like Orlando Melbourne Airport. That just gets. But here's the thing: what he said. This development, the sale of the land, does not impact on any future airport development. Can they tell the future? Yeah, not good. The airport authority has become the tail that wags the dog, man. We have overbuilt. You know, the airport, the air show went off great, but eventually it's like playing Russian roulette because of all the development around the airport. We're going to have a plane land at a building eventually. But here's the thing. That green space is the last of the green spaces. We're overdeveloping, man. That airport has become a haven for what little wildlife we have left. No more development on airport property. Now, let me ask you a question. 20 years ago, okay, would any of y'all thought that our mental hospital would be on airport property? Was that future land use envisioned by the airport board? No, it wasn't. So how do we know that this land is not going to become some sort of, it's much more useful to the people who live in this community, the environment of this community staying vacant. We're not in that dire financial strait that we need to start selling off land to meet the airport costs. We don't need the money that bad. This does not need to be sold. No more development around airport property. It's been too much, man. The green space is gone. And if you're building anywhere close to an active runway, that's not exactly smart. You know, I'm going to invest in a building, and where we have an air show and these planes fly really low. Yeah, well, okay. Russian roulette. There was a reason that when that airport was, there was a reason when the military got that land and built the airport, the Navy built that airport, that there was vacant land around it. Okay? And I'm telling you, this isn't so much of an airport as a, man, we're test flying airplanes out of there, okay? Planes that have never flown before, they take them up, We train people out there, people who learn to fly. When people are testing airplanes and people learning to fly, sometimes they go crash, okay? And it's not smart to have a lot of development around the place where they're taking and landing from. No more development around the airport. And I'm not the only one to say this. What about the people that lived at Exora Park? They had all this against the painting hangers and so forth and so on. Gee, that turned out really well. Now we have 747 sitting out there rotting. Thank you.
All right. I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor.
Ms. Thomas.
Move for approval of resolution number 3720.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve resolution number 3720 by Ms. Thomas, second by Mr. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. All right, very good. Item 20 is discussion, a presentation to council on issues concerning the pursuit of potential litigation to seek recovery of costs associated with opioid crisis. Ms. Allison Dolly?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I have been approached by a couple of different attorneys, one local and actually another from the New York area. There's a growing trend in the country for litigation related to the opioid crisis. And theoretically, the idea is that there are costs that the city incurs that are related to emergency response calls when there are drug-involved issues. So it might be overdose issues, it might be crime that arises because of the drug use, things like that. There's this trend that there are class actions bubbling up that the cities and counties are hiring class action attorneys to represent them in litigation against the pharmaceutical industry. And two of those attorneys have actually approached me and asked if they could just describe what this litigation looks like and what they believe to be the reason that the foundation for such litigation. And we just put this on the agenda tonight to give these two groups an opportunity to present what types of issues they're trying to address with their litigation. Tonight, you're not being asked to choose a law firm. It's more of a discussion and an educational opportunity to understand. You're probably hearing a lot about the opioid class actions, to understand how it might relate to the city of Melbourne. So I have, Madam City Clerk, how many speakers do you have signed up for tonight? Just one?
And
Okay.
that is Paulina Del Amero.
And just a minute.
All right,
First,
but we want Mr. Douglas.
Yes, when I first put the item together, Mr. Beam had already approached me and asked that he could present. So he's the person that is referenced in your packet.
Yes.
I was subsequently approached by the second firm and had her sign in as a public speaker so that they could do their presentation. I've explained to both groups that we're allocating 5 to 10 minutes for their presentation. Conceptually, the idea is that they do a brief overview and then give you an opportunity to ask questions within that 10 minutes. So maybe a 5 minutes overview and another 5 minutes for questions, things like that. What I'll be looking for at the end of this, and you do not have to make any decisions tonight, I have to underscore that, but I am going to be looking for some direction on whether you would want my office to pursue a request for qualification to hire a law firm to decide how to move forward on this type of litigation if we want to pursue this type of litigation. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Ms. Dolly.
Thank you. So,
the first one
Mr.
is
Beam?
Mr. Douglas Beam.
Madam Mayor, can we divide our time between 4 members of the team if we want to see?
Within the 10 minutes? Yes, ma'am. Okay, that would be fine. Okay.
Oh, careful.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to approach to the clerk, Madam Mayor, and hand something that I think you all might have had previously, synopsis of qualifications for outside counsel along with my own business. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Council, also City Attorney and City Manager. A brief overview of the opioid crisis is hardly necessary, but I think it's important to start here. And then I'll hit the major points and then turn it over to the other members of the group. The opioid crisis has led to an extraordinary number of overdose deaths, as well as significant economic costs to cities, counties, and countless other social consequences. Through this litigation that we are proposing, our team will seek to recover for the City of Melbourne past damages as well as its future costs associated with this epidemic. There's no turning back from this epidemic unless you stop it. This litigation that we're proposing and the team will carry through has several unique components to it. Number one, we have 2 local trial lawyers. You all have known me as a First Amendment lawyer. I've also tried intellectual property cases of a month or longer on several different occasions. I'm a trial lawyer. Doug Beam, who will follow me in this presentation, is a trial lawyer. There are lawyers who settle and there are lawyers who go to trial. There's a difference there. Second point of differentiation. Not only being local, you will see in our pamphlet, we intend to file in state court, and we are also guaranteeing you something that's dramatic. Within 7 days of your approval of our team, we will file in state circuit court. Now, we cannot guarantee, and you'll hear from the other team, that there is federal litigation. We can't guarantee to you that it will stay federal, but the optics and the power of this city council attacking Big Pharma in a state circuit court is undeniable. And we will fight to keep it here. Because if you go to federal, and ultimately it may have to happen, but if you go, you're a tiny drop in a large case. And so my only response to federal or not is when the last appellate court tells us we can't keep this case in state court, that's only then. So you have a local lawyers, you have a filing within 7 days, and you have it kept here, which sends a message. The headline will be, Melbourne lawyers file against Big Pharma in state court. This is a crisis that only you can address. And the power of it also, it's no loss, no loss. There's no cost associated to this city. And the only time that the lawyers here behind me and myself will get any fees is if we recover. We can recover through settlement or we can recover from trial. And this team is composed of trial lawyers who are willing to try this case for you and take down Big Pharma. Thank you. I'm going to turn this over to Doug Beam right now, and he'll follow up with this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor and Council. It's good to see you all again.
Madam Mayor, and while Mr. Beam approaches, if I could just ask anyone that's going to be speaking to go to the heart of what type of legal argument, why is Big Pharma responsible in your mind for these types of costs that the city incurs? Stay focused on what the issues are as opposed to who does it better.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is John Romano, and I'll be co-lead counsel of our group, and I'll go directly to your question. The opioid crisis came about because if you go back to the early to mid-90s, as OxyContin, other opioids, but OxyContin was being developed and put on the market, its purpose was for acute pain. That was the purpose. So that if someone was suffering from cancer pain, whether it was from a surgical procedure or, for example, from chemotherapy, opioids. A short time after opioids were in use, primarily OxyContin, which came from Purdue, one of the manufacturing companies, a pharmaceutical manufacturing company, they figured out if we get the doctors to buy into prescribing it for chronic pain instead of just acute pain, we can make not just millions, but hundreds of millions, perhaps billions of dollars. And these companies went on a campaign to not only purchase physicians, to go out and create literature which would support this scheme, but those doctors would go to seminars and teach other doctors and people within the pharmaceutical industry, including pharmacists, here's what we're going to do. So instead of someone who has back surgery getting a prescription for OxyContin, which should be short-term. Those prescriptions went for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And I can reel off statistics. We have them in the brochure, but within a relatively short time of someone taking OxyContin day after day after day after day, he or she becomes addicted to it and then needs more and more and more. Our purpose is to take the case on behalf of the city of Melbourne and go after the pharmaceutical companies, which are the ones that created and developed and profited by doing exactly what I just explained. State court versus federal court, we want to represent the city of Melbourne in circuit court in Brevard County with a circuit court judge from Brevard County and a local jury eventually. We want to be able to have a local judge and jury focusing on the city of Melbourne's case. There is many groups are representing cities and counties and taking those cases into federal court. Mm-hmm. And there is an MDL, or I'll just call it a federal consolidation of cases, pending in Cleveland, Ohio, in front of a federal judge. There will be hundreds and hundreds of cities, counties, and states which will be in that litigation. It is possible that when we file suit, there will be an attempt by Big Pharma to, it's called removal, but in essence, transfer us to federal court. We intend to fight that if that happens. We know that one of the states, the circumstances are not identical to ours, but the state of West Virginia filed in state court. It was removed to federal court. A series of steps were taken, and they had it sent back to state court. That's what we would do. And I'm not saying all of the facts and circumstances are identical, but that's what we would do. We feel this is very, very important. We have a team made up of splendid law firms and lawyers who try cases, who work night and day. We promise that we will be responsive. That's what all of the people on this team do, and that's part of the reason that I worked with Mr. Federico and others, Doug Beam and Mike Kahn, to put this team together. I said we want responsive lawyers only. I see that we're running on time, so I wanted to go to Brent. Brent Series is with the Federico firm, one of our co-counsel. I wanted him to just touch on a few items before we run out of time.
All right, thank you.
And if I could ask that they also address, maybe this is something that you could focus on, trying to understand how you calculate the city of Melbourne's damages and why a city has standing to file this action. I think of the analogy of the airplane that crashes. We don't have the authority to, under state law, to file a lawsuit against the airline to recover the costs that we spend on police and fire and emergency services to get paid back. Why is this different?
Sure, and that gets to a very specific question in terms of the application of some Florida-related law. But in this case, based upon the repeated systemic actions of the opioid manufacturers and distributors, we believe that there would be an exception to that free public services doctrine, which I think is that to which you're referring, that would be warranted here. And additionally, that particular defense is not available with respect to all causes of action. So it's a very technical discussion, but we do feel that we have arguments that could prevail in that sense. And just simply in terms of damages, these are not only the costs associated with EMS and fire personnel, also the city employs certain individuals who receive health care. Some of those costs may be elevated by virtue of this opioid epidemic. There's also potentially some costs for treatment that may be incurred by the city, both from employees and potentially others, as well as other expenses and costs that have been incurred by the city and will be incurred in the future. And so we feel that we have a great team put together of Florida law firms, as well as some firms with some national prominence and also some involvement in the MDL that could well represent the city of Melbourne in this litigation. And I don't know if we have...
All right.
Thank you. I see our time is up. I don't know if there's an opportunity for Mr. Beam to speak. But
So if there's no objection to council, we'll bring up Mr. Beam.
Yes, I agree.
Next, right? I'm on the list.
Madam Mayor, if I can suggest that we also have another group that needs to speak, so you may want to let the other group speak and then open it up for questions before you keep extending time.
Okay.
Because whatever time you're going to extend to this group, you're going to want to
Yes.
extend to the other group.
I
So if
would-
you want to extend it, that's fine.
Yeah.
Just recognize that you'll be extending to
Yes,
the other
and
group
I
as
do
well.
recognize that. If
Okay.
there's no objection. All right, so Mr. Beam?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Appreciate the opportunity. The reason this topic is before you today is because of our group. We approached Ms. Dolly. Ms. Dolly's a pioneer, first female city attorney in Melbourne. We approached her. We provided her. She agreed to put this on the agenda, and it was open to anybody. Anybody could approach Ms. Dolly and do it. We did. She put it on an agenda. We went to the extent of preparing a booklet for you on pages 6 through 9, the economic breakdown for you. We had an economist, Chad Staller from Temple University, who's also a lawyer. I don't believe any other groups can provide that kind of analysis to you. We come here because we believe we can provide you with custom legal representation. My children were born here. My granddaughter was just born here 6 months ago in Melbourne, in the hospital. Not where Jim Morrison was born. That's different, with the doors. But we know how to pronounce O'Galley. Yeah. We know that there's a finger of Melbourne that goes beachside. We have seen, I served as a prosecutor here under Mr. Wolfinger, tried what we believe to be, with Greg Hansen, the second DNA case in the United States. We're used to dealing with technical things. I started the Child Sexual Abuse Prosecution Unit here. We prosecuted drug trafficking cases during the cocaine cowboy days in Florida. It was a terrible time in Florida. We saw the effects of that. Now we have Big Pharma claiming or doing things with opioids. And let me say this, opioids does not know your skin color. It does not know your economic basis. It transcends that. Opioids is destroying Melbourne, and I see it. I've been here since 1985, opened my own firm. I'm a mile down the street, corner of Babcock and 192. I've served as president of the Brevard County Bar Association, president of the Florida Council of Bar Association, president, and I served as an expert witness for Melbourne last year in a successful arbitration hearing. As I said, children were born here. I've spent a lot of time at Grant Center coaching Melbourne Police Athletic League, and I'm a better person for it because there are great people there, and we had a great time. And my son here on the front row, thank God he looks and acts like my wife. He has a chance in life. He played ball. He's a Melbourne Police Athletic League graduate and proud of it. I'm a member of First United Methodist Church. I've chaired the trustees and the staff parish committee, and that's just down the street from here. I'm just telling you all of this because we also try cases. Mr. Romano, he won't tell you this, I'll tell you. He's in the Trial Lawyers Hall of Fame in Philadelphia. He's one of the finest trial lawyers in America, and he and I worked together on a case with Riley, his first jury trial, where we were successful in getting the largest verdict in the United States of its type right here in Brevard County recently, $28.5 million, and we collected. We also had a recent trial I did with Riley and another trial member, $4.356 million. No litigation team can come to Brevard County and offer results. So out west, they say, some of those cowboys will tell you, they're people who are all hat and no cattle. We try cases. So I'm going to wrap it by just telling you, we love Melbourne. This is where I've came here out of law school, University of Tennessee, came here with my wife. My wife opened the Melbourne Hilton Airport. She was on that team that opened that. And we love Melbourne. We're going to be here before and after the opioids litigation because we love this county. But we will give our all for Melbourne because we care. And it's important for our citizens that we get this money for our community. So thank you for
All right,
that.
thank you, Mr. Bean. All right, so 8:18, that's it. So I'm going to add, all right, so it's going to be 15 minutes for the next group. All right, Paulina, Dole. Okay, Amaral, okay.
If I may.
All right.
Good evening, council members. We too have a packet for you. I apologize that you didn't have it earlier. My name is Paulina Duamoral. I'm with the firm of Leaf, Cabraser, Hyman, and Bernstein. We are involved in this litigation. We are currently representing Broward County, the city of Fort Lauderdale, city of Delray Beach, city of Coconut Creek, and the city of Pompano Beach.
All right, ma'am, where's your firm from?
To New York City.
Okay.
We are partners with Robbins, Geller, Rudman, and Dowd, who have offices in Boca Raton. I agree with my colleagues, generally speaking, about the origins of this litigation. They arose from actions taken by the manufacturers of opioids in the late 1990s. Now, opioids have been around for a very, very long time, but in the recent past, the opioid manufacturers did decide it was time to expand the market share, and the allegations are that to accomplish that goal, they engaged in a massive marketing campaign. I'm sure you remember some of it. They made pain the fifth vital sign and downplayed the addictive nature of these drugs. As my colleagues noted, they've long since only been used in the context of acute pain and cancer pain and palliative care. And the manufacturers engaged in the campaign where they hired sales representatives, engaged doctors, paid pain foundations to spread the word. Their campaign was wildly successful. In 15 years, the number of prescription opioids prescribed quadrupled, nearly quadrupled. During the same time period, the number of deaths associated with those opioids more than quadrupled. This epidemic has now caused more than 1,000 people a day to be hospitalized from opioid overuse, and more than 150 people die every day in this country. In 2015, 33,000 people died in this country as a result of opioid overdoses. In 2016, that number went to 42,000. The problem has generated so many deaths that the opioid deaths now exceed the number of gun violence deaths in this country. They exceed the number of deaths from motor vehicle accidents. And as a result, the societal costs have been estimated on 2013 numbers, which somewhat underestimates the problem, at $78.5 billion in aggregate societal costs. The problem is one that is increasing in Florida. In 2016, there were 5,725 opioid-related deaths reported in the state, a 35% increase from the year before. There were more than 4,000 babies born in the state of Florida with neonatal abstinence syndrome as a result of being exposed to opioids in utero. Is this a problem in Melbourne County? According to the most recent 2016-2017 Prescription Drug Monitoring Program report, the Melbourne area is one of the highest, has one of the highest prescribing rates of all the counties in Florida. It's most concentrated in the Panhandle, in rural counties, in the north of Florida, and in the Melbourne area. There's also a combination drug prescription, which is particularly lethal. When you prescribed opioids with benzodiazepines, you have a particularly lethal combination, which has killed a great number of people, including, notably, some musicians, Tom Petty, Prince, Heath Ledger, all have perished from this. And Melbourne ranks very high in the prescription of that combination. So why are we talking about litigation? At this point, there are two components to the litigation. There is indeed the component against the manufacturers, which is based on a false marketing approach. There is also a component of the litigation against the distributors, the wholesalers, who are required by federal law to monitor and report unusual increased numbers of pill distributions in any particular area. They have failed to do that, and as a result, they have been charged millions and $150 million in fines for one company and many others, and several others have also incurred significant fines. So there are really two components to the litigation. There are a wide variety of both distributor and manufacturer defendants, and as a result, despite the fact that I've been doing this for 20 years, I've never seen litigation of this magnitude or complexity before. Nobody else that I've spoken to has either. There is indeed a multi-district litigation which has been coordinated before Judge Danner and Polster in Cleveland, Ohio, that is now over 400 cases. It is absolutely correct that this is a vast piece of litigation. It is tricky to talk about whether it's appropriate for you, were you to proceed with litigation. It is a question that we would want to engage with you on about whether you would want to file in state or federal court. What I can tell you is that cases that have been filed in state court have indeed been removed, and those cases that have been removed are remaining pending in federal court. The judge has issued a stay order and is not reviewing the motions to remand at this time, so the likelihood is that the case would remain in federal court. Our firm is very centrally active in federal court. My partner, Elizabeth Cabraser, has been named to the Plaintiff Executive Committee and the Plaintiff Settlement Committee. There are only 7 members of the Plaintiff Settlement Committee, and they are involved in all aspects of the discussion of this litigation. On January 9th, Judge Danner and Polster called us in for a status conference, and what might have been a very mundane task of discussing the boring parts of the litigation quickly turned into something else. He started the discussion by not mentioning scheduling, but talking about the 150 people that he expected to die on that day. And he implored us, he obligated each of us to help come up with a solution. And he is determined to try and do that in the short term. There is no question that this is a vastly important piece of litigation. There is no question in my mind that it is an important thing for this body to consider. In terms of standing, as the city attorney has requested, there are, as my colleagues have indicated, certain city-specific damages that are available. But in addition to that, if we look at this as a public nuisance, we're talking to the defendants about abating the problem. They have generated this problem by downplaying the risks associated with these medications. As a result, you have doctors thinking that it's okay to prescribe medications that in very short order result in addiction. And then you have an increased costs to the city in a wide variety of areas, not the least of which is with the Sheriff's Department, with Fire and Rescue, with Children and Family Services, the need for Narcan to reverse the effects of overdoses. As far as the municipal cost recovery bar, our position is that this is such an unusual expense that it wouldn't fall within the municipal cost recovery bar, and I agree that that doesn't apply in all circumstances. In terms of why you would need outside counsel, because it is an important and in-depth endeavor to quantify all of the expenses that you would have. It's very important to have somebody there to assess that, to take the burden off of your individual members of the city employees, to gather that information, because it's extremely time consuming. So part of what we have done in other circumstances with our other clients is to take that on ourselves as best we can. And rather than take up all the time, I'd like to leave some time for questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Dolly, or anything from council? All right.
I have a couple of questions. Have you found any analogies to this type of litigation, to the smoking or the gun litigation that's been out there? Kind of same idea that municipalities should be reimbursed for expenses that they've incurred because of that?
Well, our firm was actually involved in the tobacco litigation. We did represent cities and counties in California and recovered $12.5 billion for them. There are similarities and differences. I actually was involved in the gun litigation along the way. In my view, this is a very different set of circumstances, in part because whereas you have a legal product in the context of cigarettes and even firearms. In this context, while the drugs themselves, of course, are legal, the manner in which they were marketed was not. There was off-label marketing that was beyond the designated indications that were permissible by the Federal Food and Drug Administration. So I believe that there are real significant differences here.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Alfrey?
I guess I'm reading this and I kind of understand this, working in law enforcement for many years. My question though is, are we now saying that it's our doctor's fault as well? Because that's what it sounds like to me, because what I'm hearing and I'm seeing is that, part of this issue with the opioid issue is that, our doctors are kind of at fault for prescribing them out of context. What would you say to that?
Well, I've been doing this kind of litigation for 20 years, pharmaceutical litigation, and in every case, and in this case as well, the problem has been that the pharmaceutical companies are not giving the proper information to the doctors. Part of what we're talking about when we say that there's off-label promotion or deceptive marketing is that they had to convince the doctors that it was okay to prescribe in these vastly expanded contexts. So they started detailing, what we call detailing. The sales reps would go to general practitioners' offices and sports medicine doctors' offices and basically give the impression that if somebody has an ache or a pain, nobody should be in pain, so we need to be able to prescribe these medications. But the fact of the matter is that they're highly addictive, and there's a reason why for decades we didn't prescribe that way. And there's also a reason why now we have a huge problem.
Interesting.
And to your point, the defendants have tried to lay blame across every person involved in this, from the manufacturers, distributors, to pill mills, doctors, to individuals. And there's an argument to be made that every step there's some responsibility.
Yeah, personal responsibility in some manner on each step.
And I was watching the story about the young family that overdosed with the 3 children in the back seat, and I think one of the things I found most heartbreaking about that, of course, beyond the faces of these children, was the idea that the parent was saying that the reason why these kids had overdosed was because that if they wanted the drugs more than they cared about their children, and if you perceive addiction as a disease, then the idea that the pharmaceutical companies would play fast and loose with these pills and make the argument, they even made an argument called pseudo-addiction, whereby they would tell the doctors, if your patient is starting to exhibit drug-seeking behavior, if they seem to be needing more medication than you would think that they needed, it's not a sign of addiction. It's actually pseudo-addiction. And there were papers done about this, and the recommendation was in those contexts, the doctors were instructed to give more medication, not to decrease and take the individual off the medication. So to your point, in my view, the doctors were taken just like the rest of us were. I do believe that individuals have to exhibit personal responsibility, but there is a thing that is a disease called addiction, and there's documented proof about these medications, hence the basis of these lawsuits.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I'm all for going after the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors that abuse the opioids, no doubt. The thing that I'm struggling with right now is the greater good question, because most people that buy pharmaceuticals obviously are law-abiding people. So all of this litigation that takes place, what impact is it going to have on prices for the everyday law-abiding citizen that lives paycheck to paycheck that might struggle in buying these pharmaceuticals? Is it going to cost? Is it going to be a rise in cost as a result of the litigation?
I don't imagine that it's depending in part on how you're talking about it. If you're talking about the rise in costs for the insurance companies purchasing, if you're talking about individuals buying out of pocket, I'm not certain what angle we're talking about, but
This individual's buying out of pocket.
buying out of pocket, I wouldn't imagine that there would be significant change to the out-of-pocket costs. There has been discussion of how we deal with this problem on a grand scale, some of which I'm not at liberty to discuss because it's confidential. But suffice it to say that part of the attempt at resolution is to find a way to deal with this on a global scale, to attempt to reach resolution that addresses all of these issues so that you recognize that there are people who are now chronic users of these pills who feel that there is a need for them to continue. How do we deal with that? Do we find alternatives? Are there alternatives for those individuals who are now at a point where they're taking so much medication that they would have trouble pulling back from those medications? There are a lot of questions, all of which are being addressed and contemplated. One of the questions that we ask ourselves is what happens when we take action like the state of Florida has done to reduce the number of prescriptions, and then you see individuals resorting to illegal drugs, illegal opioids. So how do we contend with that issue as well? So it's a very, very complex problem. We are tasked with trying to solve it as best we can. That is part of being involved in this, is engaging in this discussion and taking on the companies that we believe should be held accountable for this.
All right. Any other questions? I mean, Mr. McNeese would like to speak.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. No,
Is
go
it
ahead,
going to
sir.
be for the speaker?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, all right.
See if I can articulate this in a way that makes some sense. I can see that the community's damages, speaking globally, in terms of lives disrupted, lives lost, all the effects that you've described are enormous and to some degree almost incalculable. Of course, that's what the damage process is about, putting a number on that. Looking at the city as an agency and our damages, they're obviously tiny fraction of that. And there's some assumptions made in this one presentation that I think are pretty aggressive in terms of what we could begin to justify as our hard damages. But given that as an agency, our piece of that is very, very, very small. My question becomes, if we have some standing in this litigation, it's been represented at least somewhat that standing is in our role as looking out for the community's greater good, not just looking out for ourselves as an agency and watching our dollars and cents. So my question becomes, if that's our role, where do we play, or what role do we play? How do we fit in terms of then the distribution of this damage money, the identification of who in our community has been damaged and to what degree, how many have died, and there's a huge gap between what I can see as the practicality of how we have really been damaged as an agency and how our community might have been damaged, and I see some really big numbers attached to those damages, and then where do we fit? Who does that? How does all that work?
And if I could just put a finer point on that, I think there needs to be a distinction made between what the Attorney General can represent and what the city, and my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, all of you, is that the city only looks to the city's damages, not the greater good. That's the AG's role.
The AG would be in a position to do in parens patria action, and that would be a separate action, and it's very likely that the Attorney General will engage in that way. There's been discussion of that in the media thus far. There is, in terms of past expenditures, the damages that would be attributable to the city would not be in compensation for the individual lives lost. This is not a personal injury action in that way. The cases involved at the multi-district litigation level are on behalf of governmental entities. They have to do with both retroactive looking damages, past expenditures, and abatement costs going forward, to the extent that there is a problem in this city that needs to be addressed. If there are additional personnel that are needed to deal with the problems that are arising, those are quantifiable costs that may be due the city. Those are some of the arguments that are being made. To the extent that if you have employees, as our colleagues were discussing, if you have employees that have taken the medication or have incurred medical expenses as a result of substance abuse disorders, those are potentially attributable damages to the city. To the extent that you need additional Narcan as a result, to the extent that there are more expenses for the medical examiners, to the extent that there are more expenses for the children and family services, all of those things are potential damages for the city.
No. Yep.
Yeah,
So Mayor,
Mr. Elfrey.
another quick question.
Yes.
So I understand that, of course, you want to try to keep the lawsuit local, but realistically, it sounds like it would go federal. If that's the case, what kind of timeline are we looking at?
Well, as I mentioned on this January 9th hearing, my experience pales in comparison to that of my partners, and nobody that I have spoken with has ever seen anything like this. This federal judge has made it his purpose to get this case resolved. He may or may not succeed in that. He has talked about trying to get it resolved this calendar year. I applaud him. However, it's unclear whether he'd be able to do that. As far as moving forward on a state court level, one of the concerns that I would have there is that if you file in state court, then you are going to incur costs on behalf of the city that are not going to be distributed across a wide variety of cases. At the multi-district litigation level, all the costs of that litigation are distributed across all of the cases. So there are a number of different reasons to be concerned about trying to proceed in state court. And it's not at all clear to me that you would end up getting anywhere faster in state court. However, we'd be willing to do it if that was the choice of the city.
And I just want to emphasize that we're not choosing what the
Yes.
litigation strategy is going to be or which attorneys we would go with, anything like that. There's so much more work that needs to be done before we would do that.
Okay.
It's just to get us, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It's really to get a sense from council if this is something that you would like me to pursue. I obviously would not be handling this in-house. It's an enormous amount of work and a specialty that frankly we don't have. Just want to look for direction. I think you have public comment. That would be
Yeah.
the 3 minutes
Okay.
for public comment.
All right, before I do that, Mr. McNeese?
And I think there's one other thing we'd want to consider, and I certainly don't have any idea what the answer to this question would be, but it is if ultimately responsibility is identified, then the costs that we've incurred and that all the other cities have incurred can be directly attributable and are recoverable. Do we have to be a party to the lawsuit to file a claim against those monies when they're eventually awarded, or do we have standing to do that, or would we? And I don't know if that's answerable, but it seems like a fair question.
If I may. It is entirely possible that in order to achieve a global resolution at the federal level, that the judge may achieve that by including both filed and unfiled entities. It's possible. So it may be that if you elected not to proceed at all, that you would be able to come in later and join that settlement. It is possible that that would be the case. One of the reasons why we are interested in Melbourne, you might ask what I'm doing here from New York, but this is an area that's been affected, and we are representing a number of cities and counties in Florida because of the impact, and the heart of this crisis really happened in Florida. And so I think it's important to have a variety of different types of governmental entities that are participating so that we hear what the story is for each type of entity and each size. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So I'll open up. Eric Ellebrock has signed for.
I don't want to speak. This disgusts me. How many times have I come up here talking about our citizens dying of heroin overdose? That's what's killing our people, is the heroin. It's not coming from the pharmaceutical companies. They might have got us started by heroin by taking oxys, but you know how hard it is to get a script for any kind of painkiller these days? It's not like you think. We've cracked down on the pain clinics in this county, in the city. All right? We all know Mr. Beam. I've known Mr. Beam for a long time. Outstanding job at the state attorney's office. But here's the thing.
Comments.
And he's a community stalwart. But I would feel much better if he was saying, I'm not going to make a dime out of this. The only reason these people are here is because they smell money. This is going to turn out just like the tobacco lawsuit did. Okay? How much the attorneys made a fortune. Okay, Ron Duryea, who lived over in Satellite Beach, he made so much money he bought half of St. Augustine. But what did the state see about it? We didn't see any, hardly, there was no impact on the average citizen. Again, let's point something out. Let's make something abundantly clear. The majority of deaths are being caused because of illegal drugs, heroin specifically. Now, you tell me how suing the pharmaceutical companies is going to do anything but make it more difficult for people who need medication to get medication. Okay? I would dare any of these attorneys come up and say, if we win a huge amount of money, the heroin's going to disappear. It ain't. Where were how many times have I came up here before these people even showed up and said, we have a problem? Because we do. Right? We've got people dying on our street, literally. And I pointed that out. But what this is nothing but a money grab. These people, oh, yes, it's really dangerous and our people are dying. But here's the thing. I demand as a citizen that if we pick a law firm, we limit the amount of money they can get to 10% of the total settlement or something. I would have much more respect. And I respect Mr. Khan immensely. But all of a sudden, we've got an attorney who specializes in, how should I say it, civil rights issues and such like that, coming up wanting to sue pharmaceutical companies. His motivation is money. And that is not what it needs to do. That's not going to solve the problem. Hitting the pharmaceutical companies aren't going to solve the problem. Okay? Yeah, more money. We all like money. Okay, and yes, we can use the money. And this looks like I like the way Mr. Khan placed it. The optics. The city of Melbourne is suing the pharmaceutical companies because we're going to do something. It's going to make you all look great in the press. It's going to get headlines, but it ain't going to do a damn thing to stop the heroin deaths of people. God, this woman, 23 years old, dies off of Croton Road, man, and she didn't die from Oxycontin. It was heroin. Okay, this is nothing. Miss Dolly, did these people come to you or did you come to them?
You need to direct your.
Excuse me. Would you ask the city attorney if she had asked them or did they came to her?
Miss Dolly, did they come to you?
Oh, Madam Mayor, yes, Mr. Beam did approach me and asked me if we would be interested in it. I indicated, yes, come and talk to me about it. I'm always interested in what people have to say. You know, it's unfortunate that, of course it's about money. It's about damages. It's about making the city as whole as we can be. It is the system that we deal with. That is the way that you can be made whole. We can't bring people back from death or anything like that. The legal system awards money.
But we can stop. We can take
so, Madam Mayor, if you don't have any other questions.
All right.
We can stop the heroin deaths. This, again, where were these people? It's just, they're not, I would feel much better if Mr. Khan or all these other gentlemen or the chick from New York can get up here and say, we're not making any personal money out of this.
All right. Time's up, Mr. Hellebrecht. All right, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council. What is your pleasure?
Mayor?
Don't think we need to vote on it, do we?
We do have to make, if you want to proceed with it, staff
if
needs
you would-
instruction.
And we can do that at another meeting. It's a lot of information to take in. I just wanted the opportunity.
You're out of order, Mr. Hellebrecht.
I wanted the opportunity for you to get some materials, and we can follow up. If you'd like to put it back on the agenda in a month or so, just let me know.
Okay. All right, Ms. Thomas?
I would like to say that, to me, I think it goes back to what Mr. McNeese said earlier. This would be more about the greater good than it is about the financial, even though I do know that, whatever financial we do get back would go back to our citizens, which would not be such a bad thing. In the beginning of my career, I was in the medical field, and in the medical field, it's a long time ago, people were not given pain medicine willy-nilly. I mean, you had to really show physicians that you were really in pain for you to be getting anything. And if you were given a prescription for anything, it was for a very short amount of time. Later in my career, that started changing, and it confused me. It just confused me totally because it was going in a totally opposite direction than what I had ever seen or noticed, and I immediately started noticing the addictions. I do agree we have a heroin problem, but I believe that the gateway drug could be these opioids. They start on the opioids, and then they end up on the heroin. At some point, we have to stand firm and show that we're not going to stand for this anymore. It is very addictive. I've seen it within my own family. I don't know. I'm still willing to discuss everything and I don't know if this is exactly the right way to go or I need to know a little bit more information. But I do see that we could stand here and start to make a difference in not just Melbourne, but in Florida and in the United States by taking a stand and saying we're not going to let this happen anymore.
Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Moore.
We've got a lot of information, mind-boggling, and I would like to have time to digest all this. I agree, there is a problem throughout the United States, so I would like to see this come back to us in 30, 60 days, whatever. I'm not in a position to make any type of a decision at this time.
All right, so you want to make a motion to?
Yes.
We'll bring back to council, but in 60 days?
I would like to make a motion that we bring back the discussion of the opioids within 60 days.
Second.
All right, I have a motion that was presented by Ms. Moore to bring back for discussion in 60 days, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion?
Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Thomas.
I would ask that if this is going to come back to us, a further discussion on this, I would like to know how many cities have been involved, how far they've gotten with this, how we could really see how this is going to work and how it would work, and if this would be right for our city or not. I think it'd behoove us to have as much information as we could possibly have.
Mayor?
Okay.
That is
Ms.
my
Moore.
purpose for the 60 days, Councilman Thomas.
I
so
agree.
that we have more information to go on.
Yeah, and I think when it's being presented to us within that presentation, I would really like to have the statistics on all of that.
I agree.
Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Alfrey.
Yeah, and I will add, I agree with that, bring it back and look, get some more information. I did speak to Commissioner Nardi today, and she's a nurse and nurse practitioner almost, and the county's actually looking at this as well. So if we can get some more information, kind of digest this and go from there, and then we make a decision then. So I'll have to support that.
Okay. All right, Mr. McNeese.
The other thing, Mayor, that we'll try very hard to do is get some sort of handle on what we think we could justify as our damages, our hard damages, and what does that number look like, and we'll scratch our heads, and fire chiefs and police chief, and I in particular, but also our risk manager with our health insurance, and try to get some grasp of the order of magnitude of what we think our damages might be.
All right, sounds good.
Mayor.
All right, Vice Mayor Minus.
Okay, I'd just like to add also that doesn't matter what our numbers are, that this is Melbourne, and we should be leaders in this in this venture, if you will. This is definitely very critical to our nation, but I don't think that it shouldn't matter. Yes, I agree, yes, with the numbers, but let's go ahead and, be leaders in this.
Okay.
This is Melbourne.
All right, sounds good. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Thank you for the attorneys that spoke today. I appreciate all the insight that you shared.
All right, thank you.
And Mayor,
Item,
if I
I'm
may
sorry,
one
Mr.
say,
Alfrey.
if I may say one thing also, I want to thank Miss Dolly because it was brought to her, but I appreciate her bringing it to us because it's something that we should decide. So I appreciate it, Miss Dolly, that you bringing this.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very good. Item C21, board appointments. All right, let me get right there. Okay, so, all right. C21A is the Babcock Street Community Redevelopment Agency Advisory Committee. We are to point of 3 regular members. And in our staff report, we have members who want to be reappointed. And we'll take it one at a time. Is Mr. John Emerson, who is also the chair of that board. So council, what is your pleasure?
Mayor,
Vice Mayor Minus.
I nominate Mr. John Edmondson, regular member.
If it requires a second, I will file a second.
No, it does
No,
not
it
require a
doesn't.
second. So we can reappoint, and call for a motion and a
Reappoint.
second to reappoint.
Yes.
All right, so Ms. Vice Mayor Myers wants to reappoint John Emerson, and you second. Ms. Moore, discussion? Seeing none, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. The other individual is Aaron Thalwitzer. He is on the board, and he would like to be reappointed. So I need a motion to reappoint in a second.
Mayor,
Ms. Thomas.
I make a motion to reappoint Aaron Thalwitzer.
Second.
And I have a motion to reappoint Aaron Thalwitzer by Ms. Thomas, second by Mr. Thomas. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Next, we'll call a motion or a nominations for second alternate.
No. Regular seat.
Oh, okay, for a regular seat. All right.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I make a
Ms.
motion for Ari West for the regular seat.
She doesn't want
Nominate.
to be reappointed.
Oh, she does not?
No.
Okay,
She's
so
chosen not to.
then
All
I,
right, now, usually, if there's an alternate, we'll move up the alternate. The first alternate, James,
Is it Jennifer
Jennifer
Cope?
Cope.
yeah, Jennifer Cope.
Mayor, I make a motion that we nominate Jennifer Cope.
All right, so no further nominations, so we just need to appoint,
Okay,
and I need a second.
make a motion to appoint Jennifer Cope.
Second.
All right, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
So now it would
Now-
be appropriate to call for nominations for the second alternate seat.
Okay,
Mr. Terman will automatically move up to first alternate. So you're
That's right.
seeking nominations for second alternate.
second. I nominate Christian Dietrich.
I will. I want
Okay.
to second that.
All right, no other nominations, all right, so I'll appoint Christian Dietrich as a second alternate on the board.
And I will second that.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
And
And-
thank you for the people
Yes.
that are serving on there. It's very difficult to get people to serve on our boards.
Yeah.
And thank all of you who are doing that. And John, thank you
John,
again.
and you're always here, so congratulations and appreciate, I know the board is going to be, in 6 years, it will be, I don't want to say termed out, it will be phased out. It's
Expired.
It will sunset in 6 years.
Sunset.
Yeah.
Expired.
Sunset.
All right, item B, let me get to that.
You're moving closer and closer here.
All right. This will be the Citizens Advisory Board, appointment of one regular member.
Yeah, Mayor,
Yeah, Mr. Elfrey.
I nominate Tess Martin.
Second.
No second
Nominate.
on a nomination.
Right.
All right, so,
Just have
all
it.
right, no further nominations, so we'll appoint,
If there's no other nominations.
all right. I need a motion to appoint Tess Martin as a regular member in a second. So, Mr. Elfrey, you make a motion to
I
appoint?
make a motion to appoint Tess Martin.
I'll second.
All right, and so we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Okay, at this point, based on your pool of applicants, it would be appropriate, if you're okay with this application, to make a motion to appoint Peter John Murphy to fill the second alternate seat.
Yeah. So I need a motion and a second to appoint Peter John Murphy.
I move to appoint Peter John Murphy. What is it?
Murphy.
Murphy.
I'll second that.
All right. So Vice Mayor Minus has appointed Peter John Murphy as a second alternate, second by Mr. Elfrey. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Items C is, okay, let's get to that, is the Old O'Galley Riverfront Community Redevelopment Agency Advisory Committee.
So if I can take you directly to requested action, you would first call for nominations to fill the seat held by Rick Dillon, and Rick Dillon would like to be considered for reappointment, but we would ask you to follow the nomination process.
Okay.
Mayor,
All right.
I would like to nominate Rick Dillon.
No further nominations, and then we'll just appoint Rick Dillon in a second. All
I
right.
move for reappointment of Rick Dillon.
And I second that.
All right, so I have a motion by Vice Mayor Minus, second by Ms. Moore, to reappoint Rick Dillon. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes. Call for a motion for nominations of the second regular seat, and Kyle Smith would like to be reappointed.
I nominate Kyle Smith for reappointment.
I'll second that.
All right, we can't second, so
No second.
we'll appoint.
Point.
All right, so,
I'd like to appoint Kyle
okay.
Smith.
all right, and second by Ms. Moore. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Thomas Richards.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, all right, so we'll
I'd like to appoint Thomas Richards.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to appoint Thomas Richards by Ms. Thomas, second by Vice Mayor Minus. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Mayor, I believe that moves Thomas Richards up to, he was the first alternate, and now I believe that moves him up to a regular member. Unless I stand corrected.
But we need an alternate now, right?
So,
Yeah, well, I think we'll
Yeah.
need two.
Okay, so now what you're doing is you're going to call for nominations to fill the second alternate seat.
okay,
What about the first alternate seat?
that,
The
Thomas
first alternate was
Richards.
just appointed as a regular member by your last motion.
Yes, as a regular member, but don't we have a first alternate and a second alternate?
Yes,
Okay,
but,
okay, so first and second alternate, first, it's a function of time and seat. So your second alternate automatically moves up to first alternate. So if you follow the requested action that's in the agenda package, you'll see that we want you to call for nominations to fill the second alternate seat.
all right, so I nominate Jessica Casone as the second alternate to that seat. It was noted in the notes that they said there was no females on the board, so that's just why I went with Jessica. So do I have,
I need a clarification, Mayor,
okay,
please, before we do this. Right now, David Wickham is currently serving as the second alternate.
No, ma'am, he just moved up into the first alternate seat.
All right, that's what I
Based on-
wanted to be sure. I did
Based on
not,
time and seat.
I did
yes.
not hear his name mentioned. and
It's
that's why-
automatic.
It's
Yeah, it's
automatic.
automatic.
That's all I need for clarification. Thank you.
there's no other nominations, I appoint Jessica Casone.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second by Ms. Thomas. Discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Congratulations, they have
Yes.
a lady on their board, which they were looking forward
Yeah,
to.
that's right. All right, very good. Item D, petitions, remonstrances, and communications. Do we have any for the good of the order?
No, if I may want to say
Yeah.
one thing, Mayor.
Elfie.
I know, and it's for the city manager, I know we often get the fluoride concerns coming. Is there any way, when you get a chance, that we can kind of get a grasp on this and come to a final consensus? Because I know there's so much data being thrown out there, this and that, and speaking to our people, when I went to the water distribution, they felt it was kind of necessary. So just, if we could get something, so when this comes up again, maybe we can, kind of a standing order. So,
I would like to say, I know back when I was first elected onto the seat, we did do that, and we actually did take a vote, and we did
Right,
decide to
right.
stay with, so, I mean,
I can recirculate. We provided a significant amount of backup information when this came up last time, and we'll be happy to provide that again.
Yeah.
And as I said before, I'll take a look and see if there's some new research or if any of those agencies that we rely on have changed their stance. We'll report that back to you.
and I will say, I'm not an expert on fluoride, so any information I could get, so if somebody reaches out to me, I at least know kind of where we stand. That's just, I'm asking. If you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
All right.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Thomas.
Also, obviously, everybody went to the air show this weekend, and that was a huge success. And also, for those that didn't know, the future FAA director, John Duncan, was at the air show, and he was very impressed with the airport. He went up in the new tower and saw everything that was going on with the reconstruction of the runways, the terminal. And he's probably going to end up coming back to visit us a couple of times while he's in that position. So I just want to applaud the airport staff for all their hard work. And Melbourne's got a lot to be proud of with that airport, not only Melbourne, but also Brevard County.
Brevard County.
Because that serves Brevard County, not just obviously Melbourne residents. So very proud of those folks and wish them continued success.
It was very good.
Mayor?
Yes, Vice Mayor Minus.
I'd like to ask, is that, can we have a tour of the new tower? Is that just for privileged people only, or?
No.
You know, they bring some donuts or something, and we can go up the tower.
Well, I don't know about donuts, but, I mean, if you want some, I'll get some for you.
No,
But yeah,
just
you
kidding.
can tour the tower, definitely.
How would we, can we do that as a group, or just get in touch with, I know we have 3 council members on the board.
Yeah.
Or do I call,
Tammy
Till.
Tammy Till.
Tammy Till?
Yeah.
Okay, to get up, okay.
And she's really good. Whatever time's convenient for you, she'll get
Yeah,
you in
we'll
there.
make an arrangement, yeah.
Okay. Have you all been on?
No, not at all. So there's been chamber groups going and stuff, so I had asked, we need to schedule a time to get up there.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
the board members haven't, oh, that's strange.
Mr. Thomas, I think
Yeah.
you've been there in the new
I
tower.
went up there with Barry Plans when Barry Plans came down here to look at the tower because the FAA was helping us get money to tear down the old tower, which they did. And so I went up with Barry Plans and Greg Donovan. That was probably about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Just
I'd be
because Barry was here.
interested.
Definitely,
Yeah, just once I'm
absolutely.
able to walk
They're
out.
very accessible and would welcome you. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor,
Okay. Ms. Moore.
kudos to the Orlando Melbourne Airport. They have a Dunkin' Donuts.
Yes.
Oh, so we can get the donuts.
Yeah.
That's right.
They have a
Okay.
Dunkin' Donuts.
I was thinking about gaining weight and then I have to exercise.
go up the stairs.
Yeah, I haven't been there.
All right, anyone else? All right, I have a
Happy
sign up.
Easter.
Happy
Happy Easter, everybody.
Very
Yep.
good. I have a sign up, Eric Allebrock.
Yes, the air show went over really well. Our new potential director of the FAA, as far as I'm aware, his sole qualifications were that he used to be Donald Trump's pilot. He was Donald Trump's personal pilot, and now he's going to be the head of FAA. Of course, he's been a long licensed, extreme, very experienced pilot, but gosh, from flying a pilot to becoming the head of FAA, man, boy, people you work for. about that tower, I've got one word about the tower, the old tower, because when Harry was here, I tried to get up there when they were first talking about getting a new tower, and I couldn't get it because I grew up in the old tower, and I don't see why we needed a new one, but apparently we did. I have one word for it, pork barrel. But beside that, back in the early 80s, I think, gosh, my father was still alive, I think, so we're talking late 70s, I don't know. I attended a council meeting, and they had some people bring up the fluoride discussion. They were all from John Birch. The old fluoride. I hate to point this out to you, this fluoride thing, as long as they're putting that in the water, there's going to be people who think fluoride equals mind control. Okay? Let's just be honest, man. Nobody likes the idea, but we already dump enough chemicals in the water, and heck, most people, how should I put it? They filter the water, anything. I take Melbourne water straight, which is probably a reason for my balding, but we won't get into that. People wonder, Eric, you really upset them. Why are you here? Well, in case you're all wondering, I occasionally step outside and smoke a cigarette and come right back in under observation of the police. And while I was sitting out there smoking, some lady I'd never seen in my life walks up to me, taps my shoulder, and says, "You tell the truth." I'd never seen her before in my life, man. I'm out there smoking. She walks up, touches my shoulder. "You tell the truth." I'm constantly amazed at the people I meet at a place like Walmart, or the people that go through my guard shack at work and say, "I saw you on the council on the TV show. Keep it up, boy." There is some public support for me showing up here, and I don't get paid. Thank you.
All right.
Madam
Thank you,
Mayor,
Mr. Yeah.
Can I say something to Mr. Ellerbrock?
Yeah.
Mr. Ellerbrock, you are eloquent. I disagree with you on most issues, which is okay. Disagreement don't equal disrespect. But, sir, I counted at least 8 times where the chair pounded the gavel and said you were out of order. Sexual innuendo, the cursing, the referring to the female attorney as chick, which will get you a neo lawsuit. And nowadays, sir, that's got to stop. And so if you continue to do it, I'm going to do my best to have the Melbourne police escort you out after you're given one warning.
All right. So I will adjourn the meeting at 9:10.